All right, let's talk about the cloud. It's a phrase we hear all the time, right? But what does it actually mean? Is it a real place? Some kind of fluffy data heaven floating up in the sky? Okay, let's dive in and actually figure out what is going on with one of the most important technologies of our time.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. We're breaking it down into 5 simple parts. First, I'm going to show you that you're already using the cloud, probably every single day. Then we'll nail down what it actually is. After that, we'll go over the 5 rules that really define what makes the cloud, check out the different services it offers, and then wrap it all up with the pros and cons.
Okay, first up, the best way to understand a big idea is to connect it to something you already know. And trust me, you are way more familiar with the cloud than you probably think.
So let me ask you straight up, do you think you use the cloud? A lot of people think it's just for, big tech companies or programmers, but I'm willing to bet you're on it all the time. Let's see.
Yeah, if you've ever binge-watched a show on Netflix, or sent an email with Gmail, or even just saved a file to Google Drive or Dropbox, well, congratulations. You are officially a cloud user. Every single one of those services runs on this massive remote computing power we call the cloud. So now that we know you're using it, what is this invisible engine that's powering so much of our digital world? Let's move on and get a really clear definition. Okay, so here's the official kind of textbook definition. But what does that actually mean? It just means that instead of owning your own computer servers or hard drives, you're accessing them from a provider over the internet. So if there's one key idea to grab onto here, it's this. It's all about access over ownership.
And honestly, this quote just nails it. It simplifies everything perfectly. In simple words, you're using someone else's computer. It just happens to be a very, very powerful computer. That's it. That's the whole idea right there.
But here's the thing, not just any old service on the internet gets to call itself cloud computing. To really earn that title, a service has to play by 5 fundamental rules. These are the characteristics that make it so incredibly powerful and flexible. And this table breaks them down perfectly. First, it's on demand. Just like electricity, you turn it on when you need it, and it's there. Second, broad network access. This is just a fancy way of saying you can get to it from anywhere, your phone, your laptop, you name it. Third, resource pooling. The big providers can serve tons of customers from the same shared hardware, which is what keeps it affordable. Fourth, and this is a huge one, rapid elasticity. If a website suddenly goes viral, the cloud can instantly scale up to handle all the traffic. And finally, it's a measured service. You only pay for what you actually use, kind of like a utility bill.
Okay, so the cloud isn't just one single thing. A better way to think about it is like a restaurant with a pretty big menu. Depending on what you need, you can order completely different kinds of services. Let's take a look at the main options.
So at the very top, the layer we're all most familiar with, you have software as a service, or SaaS. These are the ready-to-go apps we use all the time, like Gmail or Zoom. Now go one level deeper and you get platform as a service, or PaaS. This gives developers a workshop, basically, all the tools they need to build their own apps without having to manage the hardware. And at the very bottom, the foundation of everything is infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. This is the raw material, the virtual servers, the storage, the networking components that everything else is built on. And here's a really simple way to keep that all straight. Just think of it like this. IaaS is the raw hardware. PaaS is the workshop where you build things. And SaaS is the finished product you can use right out of the box. Easy, right?
So where does all this cloud stuff actually live? Well, there are 2 main ways it's set up. First, you've got the public cloud. Think of the huge providers like Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. Their massive data centers are shared by lots and lots of different customers. But on the flip side, you have the private cloud. This is where an entire chunk of that infrastructure is dedicated to just one single company, which gives them way more control and privacy.
And of course, it's not always one or the other. You can absolutely mix and match. A hybrid cloud does exactly that. It combines public and private clouds. You see this a lot in places like banking, where they might keep super sensitive data on their private cloud, but run their main website on the public one. And then there's the community cloud, which is kind of cool. It's a shared cloud, but only for a specific group with similar needs, like a bunch of universities sharing resources for research.
All right, so we've talked about what the cloud is, the rules it follows, and all the different ways you can use it. So now it's time for the big question. Is it actually a good thing? Let's get to the final verdict and really weigh the good against the bad.
Well, the upsides are pretty huge. For starters, it's cost-effective, since you're not buying tons of expensive servers.
It's incredibly scalable, you can access it from literally anywhere, and it's generally super reliable. Plus, all the updates happen automatically in the background, and it makes working together on projects, like a shared document, incredibly simple.
But it's not perfect. Of course not. The biggest issue, you are completely dependent on your internet connection. No internet, no cloud. There are also real security concerns to think about. You're trusting someone else with your data. You also have limited control over the whole system. And hey, if your provider has a bad day and goes down, so do you. So, after all of that, what's the one thing you should absolutely remember? It's this. Cloud computing, at its core, lets you use powerful technology without ever having to own it. You're just renting access to it.
And that brings us to a final, pretty deep question. As we move more and more of our lives, our photos, our work, our entertainment, into these rented digital spaces, it really is worth asking, when everything is a service you rent, what do you truly own anymore? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.